So good afternoon, everyone. Of course, I'd like to thank you all for joining our pharmacovigilance webinar. Today, Matt Barron and Adam Kamler are going to walk us through a presentation and live demonstration and field any questions you have. Please feel free to use the GoToMeeting interface to ask any questions of our presenters, or if you're experiencing any kind of technical difficulties, please feel free to send me any questions directly as well. So with that, I will turn it over to Matt and Adam.
Thank you very much, Billy. And thank you all once again for joining us today. And welcome to Are Your Aggregate Reports a Mess? First, I'd like to start off with a little bit of background of Pharmica, the company. Pharmica Consulting was founded around 11 or 12 years ago by Matt Kiernan and Eric Lake. And essentially what we do here at Pharmica is Pharmica provides pain relief to the pharma industry. And what that means is we help pharmaceutical companies achieve operational excellence throughout their organizations. Now, Pharmica employees, they tend to be smart, down-to-earth people that generally clients want to work with. We work with clients to adapt to their organization and accommodate the overwhelming changes that are attributed to things like market pressure, evolving regulations, developments in technology, and internal growth. So essentially, we get things done for your organization. Now, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I am Adam Kamler. I am a PV consultant for Pharmica, and I've been working in the pharmaceutical industry for over 5 years now, and I work with companies, aiding them in building the infrastructure to achieve operational excellence. Now I'm going to pass it off to introduce my partner, Matthew Barron.
Thanks, Adam. Good morning, everybody. My name is Matthew Barron, and I am a senior consultant at Pharmica Consulting and the PV practice lead. Like my colleague Adam, I've worked with many companies over the last 10 years and aiding them to achieve that operational excellence within their infrastructure, and definitely just enjoy just working on multiple projects and supporting the business to add tremendous value and get things done. I'll turn things back over to Adam.
Thank you very much, Matt. Now we're going to get into a little bit more of the background of what the topic is today. So safety databases are essentially an essential tool for PV organizations. These are very complex tools. Now, with safety databases, it is challenging to articulate how structure and interface align with the PV operational process across many of the functional areas, such as case processing or even aggregate reports. Most databases and supporting systems tend not to be up to par with regulatory standards when it comes to quality and compliance oversight. Now, this is due because these complexities and system limitations. There are challenges demonstrating proper oversight of both quality and compliance. Now, these challenges tend to create risk for organizations to be susceptible to findings of all levels. Now, we did some research, and we had found that according to the FDA news in 2014, there were over 3,500 CAPAs issued within that year, and 10% of these were attributed to the inadequate procedure citations. Now, if we factor in an average remediation cost of $150,000 per CAPA, we can see that challenges in proper oversight are causing a significant financial investment. Now, as we continued to look at CAPA statistics for the next few years, we can see an increase, and inadequate procedure citations continue to be the #1 category for a 483 to be issued in 2015. So PV organizations have habitually outsourced key systems and/or activities Now, as we can see on the surface, the strategy appears financially and operationally appealing with minimal visible risks and challenges. However, this is only the tip of the iceberg. CROs tend to exacerbate the risk for companies to understand when there is an issue with the process execution due to their high staff turnover, which then causes significant reduction in visibility of the activities. This then forces companies to be more reactive rather than proactive when it comes to managing quality and compliance issues. So these issues cause CROs to lose focus on the main question. Now, the main question is, what is the true root cause of the quality and compliance issues? And a lack of understanding of the true root cause tends to make it difficult for a company to implement an effective CAPA to address the underlying issue. So ineffective CAPAs then increase the risk for additional findings, which then leads to a negative perception of the safety operations management from regulatory authorities. So here is an overview of the activities we see in a PV organization. And this categorizes areas that are susceptible to issues in quality and compliance when outsourced. It is very clear by the slide that we can see that outsourcing of any reporting and submission activities carries a tremendous risk. Pharmica Consulting has created a quality and compliance oversight tool for PV organizations. And this slide overlays the areas with the PV organizations that we feel it is able to impact and ensure the proper quality and compliance oversight that is required. Now, for today's example, we will be highlighting the tool's impact on periodic reporting or aggregate reporting. So the overall structure of the tool and the areas it supports, there are 7 modules of the tool, which are designed around the 7 corresponding PV processes. Now, there are approximately 160 data fields outside the safety database in the tool across all 7 modules. The tool supports several PV functional areas in compliance and quality, such as aggregate reports, case processing, risk management plans, and as well as safety data management. In the demonstration today, we'll be reviewing the aggregate report calendar and compliance module, which encompasses one of these processes. On this slide are examples of the quality and compliance visualizations the tool has to offer. The one on the left displays the case processing and quality analysis, and on the right we have our aggregate report submission compliance. I bring this up because here we would like to highlight the 2 specific areas in which we differentiate our tool. Even though these are 2 completely separate reports that provide an analysis for 2 different topics across the 2 PV functions, we can clearly see that the interface and structure of the tool are similar. It also offers quicker orientation and adaptation of the tool across the modules, which then leads to enhanced usability within the organization. These dynamic reports were designed with the mindset to help organizations perform many different types of analyses. These analyses help provide answers to many different questions or issues in quality and compliance for their respective functions. Now, all of this is done using the same report. And this is beneficial to companies who typically develop oversight reports to target a very specific question or issue. Now, additional questions or issues usually require additional reports to be created, and it incurs an additional cost. This is not the case for this tool. Before we get into the demo today on aggregate reporting, I just wanted to highlight a case study to demonstrate the benefits a company realized using our tool. Now, keep in mind this is not actual data. However, it is data to simulate the occurrence. When our client analyzed the data, they had found that after further investigation, there were a significant number of late cases that were the result of a supplier delay. This was caused by the safety data information that was provided to the client by a business partner outside of the agreed upon timelines defined in the PV agreement with that partner. So this then identified that the client needed to update their PV agreement with the business partner to ensure adequate safety information exchange timelines. So then after that, the client had realized a 20% increase in compliance within 2 months of implementing the updated PV agreement. So furthermore, the client was able to use the tool to replicate their analysis and confirm that the update to the agreement was in fact the answer to the problem, and it resolved the issue. So our tool has added value to a number of organizations, and we would also like to highlight specifically that clients using the aggregate report and ICSR compliance modules of the tool have received positive feedback from regulators, business partners, and auditors during health authority mock inspections and even internal audits. We are also pleased to report that during a recent health authority inspection, which targeted a number of areas, including ICSR quality and compliance oversight, the company received no observations or findings upon review of the overall process the tool supports and the visualizations that the tool generates. Now I'd like to transition to my coworker, Matt, who will dive further into the high-level process and tool components.
Thanks, Adam. So just to summarize, I think Adam has done a nice job at this point of kind of framing up for context around the challenge for organizations, as well as kind of then summarizing how our tool, we feel, has brought value to organizations to mitigate those challenges. To then dive now deeper furthermore, I wanted to then share, as Adam had mentioned, the aggregate report module of our tool. So the aggregate report, what I'm showing on the screen here, is really just at a very high level process that's really kind of pretty standard for all aggregate report processes. We feel it's broken up into 3 major components: the planning phase, the execution, and closeout phase. Within the planning phase, it's really more gathering all of the scheduled aggregate reports from all the appropriate stakeholders. So gathering that information to understand what the body of work that you'll have to execute on is for the given year. Once that has been finalized and inputted, we then can now go through the execution phase, where as the reports are authored and published, distributed, and submitted to the health authorities and other appropriate parties, it's a requirement to capture that information to make sure that you're staying within the schedule. And then finally, the closeout phase is really to then close out that report information and have the opportunity to generate metrics to ensure proper compliance with the submission regulations. So that's really at a high level what we've done, and what you'll further see is we've actually designed our tool to really truly align with this process. So the next slide here kind of just highlights the three kind of basic interfaces of the tool. We have the home landing page, which really is a simple and intuitive button interface. The data input layer, which really has a very, again, simple data entry interface for the end user, and is typically very intuitive and is designed around, each interface is designed with the understanding of an activity that user would have to do in the tool. Finally, we have the compliance analysis. This is where you can actually analyze and view and visualize how you're actually performing from a compliance standpoint for aggregate report submission. So with that, before diving into the tool, so that was kind of just a quick overview and a preview. Before diving into the tool, I wanted to just ask Billy, do we have any questions on the line at this point?
We have not received any questions. You are good to go into the live demo.
Thanks, Billy. All right, so now what I'd like to do is just bring up the actual tool itself. So this here is the aggregate report calendar home landing page. So this is the simple landing page with a simple button interface, again, broken up into two major components around data management and data oversight. Within the data management interface, we have, two simple buckets of scheduling reports, and then furthermore closing reports. Again, this is very much aligned with the actual process, standard process we reviewed in the slides. In data oversight, it's then a view to monitor the reports that are pending, and then finally the actual compliance metric analysis. So for the demo here, I just want to go quickly through each one to give you a feel of what each interface looks like. So clicking on scheduling a report now takes you to the actual interface to actually, again, when you're actually creating the survey, you have gotten the data back from all of your appropriate stakeholders. You're now going to add that information to the tool to then build the actual schedule of aggregate reports for the current year. And again, this is pretty standard in normal processes to make sure that you have the appropriate planning in place. So again, as we're coming up, the interface here, just to kind of highlight, we have the simple data entry interface. We've actually set this up so it will always be blank for the user when coming to the screen. And the benefit of doing this is that we avoid any overwriting of previous data or modification by accident due to user error. So the actual, kind of information we can capture here is just simple metadata about the report. But again, the simple project name, the product name, the different report types. As you can see, we can have a number of different report types listed here, and these can be added and modified as necessary. The reporting period start date, the DLP date, the regulatory submission deadline. The report status, is it planned, ongoing, completed? Again, this is a simple drop-down. Is the report being outsourced to create or submit by a CRO? What country is that report for? Any additional comments you want to mention about the report, just free text fields, blinded, unblinded requirements that it may have for a certain country. Is there any business partners involved, and are they involved in preparing it or not? And then any other relevant, like the DIB and IBD for that report that will help kind of gain oversight of what the reporting period needs to be, and so forth. So really, again, there's just a number of different metadata information the tool has that it can be captured in this data entry interface when scheduling the report. And again, this is customizable to capture these fields or additional fields or less fields that you may want to capture per your standard process. So within the next interface of closing the report. So this interface, a little bit different than the actual scheduling of the report. What we actually have used this interface to design is all of the reports that now, once you now get confirmation from the appropriate parties that they've been submitted, this is an interface where you can go in and actually mark that report as complete or not for the appropriate country it was submitted for. So this kind of gives you, a more an easy interface to interact with, to understand, what reports need to be closed out. And again, as you start editing the data here and actually placing them as completed, you will notice that when you come back to the screen, that information will fall off this view and be saved into the system. Jumping back again, just coming back to the data, now going into the data oversight section. This really was designed, this view of monitoring the pending reports is really kind of just as you're going through the process and of the year, you have multiple aggregate reports going on across your products. This gives you insight into what aggregate reports and what submissions for those aggregate reports may be still pending, and gives you the opportunity as needed to then follow up with that responsible party who's responsible for the submission to ask them and confirm whether or not that's been completed or not. So again, it's really just another interface to help out with more monitoring the oversight of whether or not a report was submitted or not. And as they get submitted and changed to completed in the system, again, they will actually automatically fall off this view. So the last visualization within the tool that we have is around data oversight is our actual dynamic visualization component. So this is actually a very, very dynamic and user-friendly tool that will help the users analyze their overall submission compliance. Before kind of diving into the functionality, I'll give you a quick overview of what we're presenting here. But then, at the top right, we actually have the high-level monthly summary. This will provide the total number of monthly reports for that given time period that you're filtering on. It will indicate the number of submissions, and then furthermore, the actual percent on time that you've achieved in submissions. And this is really critical for many companies if they tend to have a certain threshold that they want to stay and meet. And if they drop below that threshold, they really want to make sure that they take the appropriate corrective action to ensure that that actually does not happen again. So furthermore, now moving on to the left side of the visualization, we have these different two various graphs. The top graph here will actually show across your different report types and products what your raw counts of submissions are broken out by on time or late. So for example, for product 4, for the DSUR, there were 16 total submissions, 15 of which were on time, and 1 of which that was late. The graph below actually shows an identical visualization to that, only what it does is breaks it out by percent on time and late. So similar to that P4, again, you had 15 on time, 1 late. That equates to 94% compliance of on-time submissions, and 6% of those submissions were late. At the bottom of the screen here, then we also have the calendar view, which actually displays across the products, and it displays the actual responsible party of the late submissions. So if you hover over this, you'll actually see, you can understand that for product 3, that DSUR, the responsible party was an internal submission, and that was submitted to the UK. One of those submissions was performed late. This kind of gives you a geographical look to see where you're actually submitting late. And then based on the number of counts in that country, you can kind of gain more insight that potentially is there a geographical challenge with regards to your submissions or a given product. So again, this is definitely a lot of excellent insight to be gained out of these reports. Furthermore, then, just to kind of show you some of the functionality, on the far right side here, we have the actual filtering component of the tool. We can add and remove filters as needed, but as you can see, as I start to change the filtering of, say, metric month, the actual all visualizations will continue to update. And furthermore, if I wanted to look at, I can do multiple filters across multiple parameters such as product. So if I just wanted to look at one product here, I can then further click through for that given month or time period and or report type. So all those different filtering capabilities are available. And once again, we can actually provide additional filters based on your requirements. The last piece I wanted to just demonstrate with respect to the data, because once it's great to be able to see this visualization, but now you want to drill down into the raw data and to further investigate some of the information and detail. So the tool offers that by clicking on the appropriate area that you want to review, and it'll bring up this simple report to give you an overall summary. But then if you wanted to actually look at the full data set, that is available for you. And then furthermore, just look at all columns in the tool. Again, that information, can easily be visualized in this tool directly. So with that was what I have today from a demonstration of the tool. Hopefully this was valuable, and you can see some of the obvious value that it can add for your organization. With that, I'll turn it back over to Billy. Is there any questions on the line?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. That's great. Can you hear me, Matt?
I can, thank you.
Just make sure, since I came off mute. Okay, so the first question we've received is, how does this interface with the safety database?
Thanks, Billy. It's a great question. So how does this interface with the safety database? The reality is that this actual module of the aggregate report calendar is actually, all the data here is captured separately from the safety database. There is certain components where some safety databases do some form of data tracking, not to this level, but can do that. And our tool will accommodate some data connections to be able to feed information directly to our tool via the data entry layer. But typically, most of the information is stored and captured separately outside of the database.
Great. The next question we received is, can you set unique thresholds on your metric reports?
Thank you for that question. Thank you, Billy. That's a good question. Yes, we do have the ability to set the unique thresholds within the tool. And in the demo, we saw an instance where we set a unique threshold for the on-time submission percentage. And in the report, we set this at a 95%, and the box was red for any percentage below 95, and anything that was 95% and above, the box had turned green. Now, we will work with the client to set these types of goals.
Next question we received is the system validated?
That is also a great question. Thank you, Billy. So the solution out of the box essentially is not validated. However, it can be validated and has been validated in the past. We see that every company has their own specific validation practices and policies, and we can adapt to those validation practices. So essentially, validation is done on an ad hoc basis.
All right, great. Next question we received is, can you set alerts or have the system notify key stakeholders around certain triggers?
Thanks, Billy. I'll actually take that one. So for this one, the short answer is yes. The system does have the ability to set alerts based on the certain triggers, and this is usually defined during the installation process and requirements gathering process, whether or not a client does prefer that. One example of the type of alerts that we can actually enable is in the instance of the threshold, we can actually have the system send targeted emails to the appropriate stakeholders when the system or when that percentage score drops below the company's threshold, and that will actually act as a targeted trigger to then to have the people know that they have to go in and now ensure react to the situation and ensure that a resolution is identified, root cause in the resolution is identified.
All right, great. At this point, we have received 2 more questions. So after this, we will be wrapping up. So if If anyone has any more questions, please submit them. So second to last question we have is, can you enable an approval step for data to feed your reports?
Thanks again, Billy. That's a very, very good question, actually. The system's ability to do this is again, short answer is yes. And we've actually seen some clients have really pushed to have this. Where that approval step typically comes in is at the point after data entry, before the data goes and feeds the actual compliance visualizations. They do, in some cases, prefer to have that approval step to make sure that the data is in fact true and completed and everything is set before it's actually published and available for analysis by the appropriate parties. So that's where essentially once that report is completed, there's sometimes that based on requirements is an approval step from the client to then verify that information before it goes. And then once that approval is done, the data is then available for analysis by the appropriate parties. Again, that is typically though defined within the requirements gathering upon system implementation for each client.
All right, great. And this is the last question we received. So after this, we will wrap up. I did see someone had raised their hand, but I have not received their question yet. So if you had the question, please type it using the question part of the GoToMeeting interface. Last question is, can the system store the actual aggregate report? Hello?
Thank you, Billy. Sorry, a little bit of an audio issue here, but yeah. So the tool itself, it's a great question. It actually does not store the actual report. It really is just metadata supporting the aggregate report around that compliance and the various different information about the schedule of that report. The formal report is typically stored based on client needs in something like a documentum system. With that said, the actual system can be configured to store documents for the client. Again, it's completely feasible, and we can do that on an ad hoc basis, but that will really be based on the client's needs.
Okay, great. Well, that seems to be all the questions we received. Once again, I'd like to thank everyone for joining today. We're going to post this webinar on our website, and we will deploy an email notifying all of you when it's up. So if you enjoy the content and like to see it again, or you want to share it with someone in your workplace or your network who might benefit, please share it with them. If anyone is interested in learning more about the work we do with pharmacovigilance or any of our other areas, please reach out to Matt or Adam or myself. And again, thank you all for joining us, and have a great rest of your day. Oh, wait, did we get what we just... Matt, Adam, are you still there?
I'm here.
It looks like we got a question as I was wrapping up, so I will just say, are you developing any tool to assist the preparation of the reports?
So thanks, Billy. That is a great question. We actually have some we'll call them not tools readily available, but definitely have done some custom solutions for clients to support that, and actually have a number of different capabilities internally, even to manage the different automation of that. Because I think that managing the different data sources that each report, as folks are aware, captures information from a myriad of different data sources, and what our capabilities and tools that we can offer to support that will be to help with providing an interface to connect to those data sources and generate the aggregate report. But again, that's what we have available has been more for custom solutions, but not something out of the box. But happy to discuss further if that would be preferred.
All right, great. And then she also added, meaning timelines of review and tracking of actions from the teams. That was an add-on question.
Excellent. Thank you, Billy. So yes, and that actually, again, similar to what I had mentioned, that actually is feasible, and actually within our existing tool, We have done something a little bit similar for one client where we've actually built that into the tool you saw today. The actual, so that's actually something that is what we found is very beneficial, but the actual out-of-the-box solution we have today does not have that, but again, can be enabled.
All right, great. So with that seems to, and well, that person would like to see a live demo of that. So yes, we will absolutely follow up. I have your information from asking the question, so we can absolutely follow up, and myself and Matt and Adam could set something up with you and your team. All right, well, that seems to be all the questions now. Thank you so much, and have a great rest of your day.